Hi guys, I'm Jennifer King, and it is a cold Southern California rainy day, so it's the perfect day for my chili beans, and I'm going to share my recipe with you. So we are first going to start with some ground chicken. I like to use ground chicken. You can also swap it out for ground turkey or ground beef or ground bison, whatever your preference is. So I've heated up a large pan here, a large pot actually, and drizzled some extra virgin olive oil in there. And you always want to start with your oil and get it nice and hot. Because whenever the product hits your pan, you want to hear the sizzle. If you don't hear the sizzle, it wasn't ready to go in and it's just going to sit in the oil and not really start to hit and caramelize. So I'm going to add in our ground chicken for tonight is what we're using. You can hear the sizzle. That's good. So I'm adding that in there. And then I'm going to give my hands just a quick wash. And let's talk about some other ingredients that are going to go in here today. With chili beans, I add lots of ingredients. We're going to use about 4 different kinds of beans. I'm also going to add in some stewed tomatoes and onion, bell pepper, some green chilies, and then of course some spices that are going to spice up our chili. I do have a secret ingredient that I'm going to share with you a little bit later. But first, let's go ahead and season our meat. So I have some garlic salt. I use this, if anyone knows me, I use garlic salt on everything almost. It just adds a really yummy flavor. So I'm going to add the garlic salt. I also have some cool organic chicken seasoning. And this has sage and it has some onion, garlic, thyme, marjoram in it. And I just love putting this on my chicken breast and on my ground chicken, even for tacos. Next, I'm going to add another favorite recipe ingredient, which is cumin. And in Mexican cooking, we use a lot of cumin, a lot of comino, we call it. And it just has a really smoky, yummy flavor. It kind of gives it a little southwestern Mexican kick there, which is definitely delicious. And then finally, some chili powder. You can't have chili beans without chili powder, but be careful with this, because a little goes a long way. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle in some chili powder. And I'm going to keep my seasonings out because later I'm going to add this in once we add all our beans and ingredients. So I have a big wooden spoon here. I'm just going to break apart my chicken and make sure it's nice and bite-sized for when you take a bite, a spoonful of chili in here. So we're going to let the chicken, the ground chicken, brown up. And as you know, with chicken or any poultry, you always want to make sure you cook it thoroughly. It has to be cooked all the way through so that you don't get salmonella. That's why it's really important when you're working with raw chicken or poultry in your kitchen to always stop, wash your hands, clean down your cutting board, make sure you don't cross-contaminate the raw product because you can really get sick from that, and that's no fun. So in addition to our ground chicken, while that's browning up, I'm also going to add our vegetables, and I'm going to add just some chopped regular brown onion or yellow onion. And then I'm also going to add in just some diced green pepper. You can also, bell pepper, you can also use red bell pepper and yellow bell pepper. I just like the colors that it brings to my pot, so I'm going to add that in there. And then I'm going to give that a little mix. I'm also going to add just some salt and ground pepper, fresh ground pepper. And as I talked about in the last video, most chefs use kosher salt because they like, they get used to the amount of salt that's in their hand. It's consistent. It's also pretty affordable. Table salt should not have a place on your table at all. It should be out of your kitchen. You have to use so much table salt to equal just 1 pinch of kosher salt. Also, I know sea salt is really popular these days, but sea salt is A, more expensive, and B, it's inconsistent in the potency. So some sea salt might be, saltier than others, so that's why chefs like to have that consistency so we can make sure and season properly. So we've got our chicken going, our onions, our bell pepper. I'm going to add a little bit of kosher salt. And I'm going to add some fresh ground black pepper. This is my favorite pepper grinder. It is, when I worked at Sur La Table, I bought it. Kuhn Recon makes it. And it is amazing. It's so easy to fill up too with the little peppercorn. So I love this guy. Little plug for Sur La Table there. So once our chicken is browned, which it's almost browned, and our vegetables are starting to become translucent, they're becoming cooked and softened, then it's time to start adding all our other beans and ingredients here. So I'm going to start start by adding some beans. I have black beans, so I like to get all organic. I try to do organic anytime I can, just for the health of my family. So I add the juice from the beans too, for the black beans. So I'm gonna add in the black beans. And then I'm going to add in our pinto beans, okay? Just a can of regular pinto beans in there. Yummy. And then I drained out the liquid for the kidney beans. That's one bean that I don't like to add the liquid. It just is kind of foamy, and I just think you need to rinse them first. So I've rinsed the kidney beans, so I'm gonna add those in there. But the colors that it brings to the chili is just really beautiful. And then I'm gonna add some green chilies. You can get the Hatch chilies, organic, just green mild chilies. I do about half of this can in there. Okay, and then I'm gonna mix this all together. Oh, it's so pretty in here. I'm gonna show you guys in a minute. And then I'm gonna add a can of stewed tomatoes. I love the stewed tomatoes because they break down really nicely. They add color and just a little acidity to our chili too. So I'm gonna add in a whole can of stewed tomatoes. And then finally, what I add is, this is kind of a surprise ingredient too, but it's gonna thicken our chili. I'm gonna add a can of refried beans, and that's gonna just make that chili nice and thick and yummy. And the only thing with the refried beans, once you add these in, is that you need to make sure that you stir them in and they don't burn and stick at the bottom. So I'm just gonna break this apart and really get it all in there nice and yummy, okay? So I'm just mixing all this in. And then if there's not enough liquid in your pot, which there's not right now in mine, I'm gonna add just some water to it to kind of thin it out and get everything moving here. And you can just eyeball it. If you like a thicker chili, don't add as much water. If you like a thinner chili, then add a little bit more water. So I'm just adding this in to kind of loosen up the beans and get everything mixed in here really nicely together. This is gonna simmer for about 20 minutes. Chili beans are something so yummy and quick and comforting that you can make them really quickly. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this kind of, all these flavors start melding together, and just put it on a nice little simmer so that it's, the bubbles are coming up on the side. You don't need it at a rolling boil. You just want it to kind of simmer and sit and have all those flavors come together. So now at this point, we've seasoned our chicken, but now we need to season our actual chili because we've added liquid to the pot. So again, I'm going to adjust the seasoning. So I'm gonna add a little bit more chili powder to it, a little bit more cumino or cumin for that smokiness, that yummy flavor, a little bit more garlic salt, and we don't need the chicken seasoning, but I am gonna add some more salt and some more ground pepper. Now, the kicker here, the secret ingredient that I mentioned earlier, is gonna add a little bit of sweetness to our chili. And when you're thinking of the perfect bite in the kitchen, chefs always think of sweet, salty, bitter, sour. That's the perfect bite. You want all those flavors to hit your tongue to make it taste just right. So we're gonna balance the flavor out. We have a lot of spice in here and smokiness, but we don't have a lot of sweetness, and we have the acidity from the tomatoes for the sour. So let me go ahead and show you my secret ingredient. Secret ingredient are chocolate chips. Dark chocolate chips or a couple dark pieces of chocolate are wonderful. I literally put maybe a little handful in there, and I just sprinkle them in, and then I stir them. And again, chocolate, you don't want it to sit at the bottom of the pot and burn. So just make sure it's well incorporated into the chili so that it doesn't just sit at the bottom and sink and burn at the bottom, okay? So we're gonna let this all come together, all these delicious flavors. Like I said, about 15, I would say about 20 minutes, 20, 25 minutes. I just turn it on until it starts to simmer. I put the lid on just a little bit to leave a little space for the heat to come out, and I forget about it. And I'll go make my cornbread and get my toppings ready for my chili. I'll be back in a little bit to show you how to finish the chili and what the finished product looks like.